This is the first chapter of the official Jordan Kelby anime, Volume 1, Boston. Releases this Friday, February 18th, for free. Chapter 1. So explain to me why the fuck you did what you did again? Boston asked, exacerbated and rubbing his eyes with his thumb and ring finger, holding his cigarette between his index and middle finger. Well, boss, the guy was being a dick to some kids down on the corner, and we wanted him to be a better person, Mickey said in earnest, a smile breaking at the edges of his lips. Mickey was a medium-height guy. He had a short brown beard, and he kept his hair a little longer. It was often unkempt and scruffy. According to him, it was done so on purpose, and it did have its charm. He was of medium build as well as height, a fairly unassuming physical specimen, but he was crafty, wily, and likable. He knew how to use his surroundings to his advantage if things got dangerous. Direct confrontation didn't often find Mickey, but when it did, he was always prepared. He had green eyes that sat in tired sockets despite him sleeping well. He was young but had deep laugh lines, and his default state was a cheeky side smile that had creased his facial features. And his skin didn't cling tightly to him, but it didn't sag off his bones either. He typically wore khaki pants and a combo of solid-colored t-shirts under some sort of long-sleeve button-down, unbuttoned. The button-ups varied from ornate patterns and colors to simple monochromatic schemes, like the undershirts. But they always went together nicely. He would often change between 3 different sneakers, a black pair, a white pair, and a red, black, and blue pair. He had owned them for many years, and they showed their use in the creases and scuffs, but he paid them no mind. He had once had a gray pair, but they had finally split open, and he was forced to throw them away. Years ago, he had had some piercings on his eyebrows and in his ears, but he had recently decided to take them out. The light imprints of where they used to be could be seen if you stared hard enough. So you broke both of his legs and used the money from his wallet to buy the kids some candy from the canister, Mickey said, filling in the words. His voice was high-pitched, and many other members of the gang referred to him as the Mouse, in a not-so-subtle nod to a large corporation. His Southie accent from the side of Boston he grew up on was ever-present and ever-strong. You're fucking lucky this asshole was another consistent lowlife. On God, if it was any stupid asshole that would have gone to the cops, you know what a headache we'd be in right now? Boston said, putting his cigarette out in the ashtray in front of him on the card table. I know all the local scumbags, boss. You know I wouldn't do nothing if it hurt the boys. What candy did you buy the kids? Boston asked. Got them some taffy and some chocolate, whatever the kids wanted, Mickey said proudly. You did good. I swear if you had just thrown them whatever the hell without even asking for their opinion, I'd think you were as thoughtless as O'Malley. Get out of here. Go walk 24th with Dylan and Jenny. Make sure everyone down there's acting right and being kind to one another, Boston said with a finality as he stood from his chair and checked to make sure his holster was still firmly in place. Boston wore black pants with black shoes, a white button-up with the top few buttons undone and the sleeves rolled up. A black tie hung loosely around his neck, and he had a holster with a personal 9mm. His short black hair was always perfect, swept back just enough to look professionally done, and he looked like a cartoon character every time someone saw him. Always wearing the same clothes and looking good even when he should look otherwise. Mickey, who like a normal fucking person, varied by day to day and circumstance, would make fun of the boss politely about him being from a cartoon or an anime. Mickey liked One Piece, wouldn't fucking shut up about it. I gotta go down a few blocks, got a meeting with a most esteemed representative. I'll be back at some point. Have a coffee for me in the morning, Boston said as he went through the metal door in the back of the brick room and filtered out into the street. It was a fair afternoon for breeze and the sky was cloudy. It wouldn't rain, but the sun was gone for the day. He made his way through the town with his weapon open, and he lit another cigarette while on his walk. Hey, Boston, a fair voice called from a nearby porch. Morning, Miss Brown, Boston waved back. Did the boys drop by with this month's package? He asked. They stopped by last night. Thanks for thinking of me, she said happily as Boston continued his walk. The Kelby boys controlled a small part of Boston, a once poor and impoverished area that the gang had helped turn around through various businesses and communal effort. The prosperity had allowed for a sort of universal basic income to be given to the people of Boston's territory. They were usually packages of things the persons needed along with a set amount of money per month. People weren't muscled into it like many other gangs. It wasn't in exchange for protection or anything of the sort. If you lived in Boston's community, you got his benefits, unless you crossed his lines, in which case you were dealt with swiftly. The rules put in place were generally agreed upon to be fair. No racism, sexism, homophobia, or transphobia, no sexual assault or harassment, no cruelty or unnecessary violence. Boston asked for his citizens to be the bare bones level of human kindness, and in return, he would help make their lives better. Through dubious means, surely, but how many shades of gray was stealing from billionaires? If rich assholes all around the globe could pay politicians to make the world worse, why couldn't he pay some, or break a few kneecaps, to make it better? There were 2 women standing guard by the door in the side alley. "Hey, boss," the one on the right said. "Hey, Veronica. Morning, Shauna." The 2 looked happy to see the boss. "Has he said anything yet?" Boston said, trying and failing to look through the metal door. "Nothing," Shauna said. "Well, fuck, what an absolute failure. No fucking wonder his friends ain't come to get him. Can't be helpful to anyone, fucking probably. What a fucking... God damn it, I swear, give me my fucking bat," Boston said, reaching out, and a splintered wooden bat was placed in his hands. While Boston was a kind person in his compassion towards those he watched over, to say he was a holistically good person would be a mischaracterization. Boston was good in his actions and his treatment of innocent people, but to people that incurred his wrath, he was one of the most vengeful spirits you could imagine, as though the very hell preachers down south warned their parishes of had been made manifest and come hatefully at its enemies. The one in question, for whom Boston raged at now, was a lieutenant of a rival gang that controlled some territory adjacent to Boston's, and they had a reputation for being the opposite of everything Boston's gang was. They mistreated and overworked the citizens that lived within their zones, and they were in cozy with police officials and politicians who would look the other way. Boston had always hated their actions, but never had the manpower to do anything about it, and had not wanted to incur the wrath of local officials. That was until a couple of people from Boston's territory were kidnapped for a ransom. Why the sudden money was needed was unknown, and Boston figured it more of a play for power than anything. He swung the metal door open and revealed a sparse room with soundproof foam on the walls. A man sat in a chair with his arms restrained, and he was dirty and ruffled for sure, but more than in good condition. "I'm not telling you shit," he began to yell, but Boston had swung the bat into the man's ribs and crushed the air from his retort before being able to finish. He kicked the chair over and the man fell sideways to the ground. Boston swung the bat like a club at the man's ankle, and it shattered against the concrete, breaking the ankle and splintering the bat further. The man screamed in pain. "Oh, fucking ah!" "Listen, you absolute statistical waste of human resources. I'm going to ask you to do one thing, and I know you failed literally every time they've asked you to do anything in your whole miserable life. But this time, I'm going to need you to really focus up, try your hardest, and not fuck up anymore today, you understand? Because if you piss me off, I'm going to have to start hurting you." "What do you call what you just..." Immediately, the bat slammed against the other ankle, and the man shut up as the bones snapped. "What the fuck did I just say? A couple seconds can't go by without you letting me down? Where in the fuck of all of Boston did you take my people, and why did you do it?" "To pay off the cops, fuck! My boss is losing control on the cops in the area, and they shut down some of his operations. Money's drying up, but they still want to be paid off. He was trying to get the money from you. Fuck, man, it hurts. Ah, shit!" he cried through the pain. "Fucking finally. Now where are they being held?" Boston asked, now balancing on the balls of his feet, the bat laid across his bent knees. I can't." "Look, man, your boss, he hasn't sent anyone to help you. I came down here myself to break your fucking ankles. There's a certain personableness that comes with me. Why not just leave your boss, huh? He's left you to die, you got beat up, and meanwhile, I'm the head of my whole operation, and I'm asking you to better yourself, and I'm giving you a place to stay," Boston said, taking the bat and putting it over his shoulder. "I hurt you real bad, but you did finally do something right and tell me where they took my guys. So this is your chance to do a second thing right. I promise I reward when things go right," Boston said, pressing the idea that he was a benign figure that just wanted to reward the man. You make a good point," the man said, sweating heavily now, sniffling through new but smaller tears. "You tell me where to go, and I promise I'll have Shauna come in and take you to get patched up. Then she'll take you to Ricky's, and I swear you'll have the best food of your life. You like Spanish food? Ricardo has some of the best chicken and yellow rice you could ever have. You'll go with Shauna, it'll be all covered, and then I'll come visit you after you get fixed up, too. Boston said, promising kindness, in contrast to the man's former boss, who had in all reality left him to die. Boston wasn't lying either. If this guy did make a good faith effort to be a better person, Boston would have a place for him, and he would be treated just as Boston had said. Yeah, I like Spanish food. All right, they're being held in a liquor store down in Alteria Boulevard. The boss himself is there. There's a hidden basement below the place's cellar. Your friends and the old boss are there, the man said. The man saying old boss was a welcoming sound to Boston's ears. Boston righted the chair he was sitting in and untied his hands. Boston clapped the man on the back and asked him his name. It's Donnie McTav. Donnie was a heavier man, large in physical size, but seemed not too sinister. More than likely, he was a lieutenant in a financial sense. Did something important with his old boss's books, and his weak constitution had allowed Boston to sway him easier than many. Boston went to the door and got Shauna. Take him to Doc Dougal's and get him patched up. After that, take him to Ricky's and get some food in him. Take him to the apartments after and see that he gets some rest and meets some of the other boys. In a quiet tone, Boston leaned into Shauna and whispered, Run a background check on him, too. If he hasn't done anything irredeemable, give him some desk work to do. Figure out what he's good at. So the usual, Shauna asked, giving Boston a side eye and a smile. Yeah, the usual, Boston retorted back, eyebrows raised. Come on, Veronica, help me carry him to the car. With that, the two took Donnie to the dock, and Boston made his way to Alteria Boulevard. Boston had picked up Jerome and Cassie on the way to the liquor store. Cassie had been an MMA fighter that once shattered Boston's nose in a sparring match, and the two often fought for fun, and they kept a running score of their victories. One was never far ahead of the other, and the two had passed each other multiple times on the scoreboard. She was muscly and around 5'8", with short-cropped red hair that every once in a while she'd shave down to a sort of high and tight if she got annoyed with any sort of upkeep. She often wore shorts and a tank top to always stay comfortable and formidable. She liked full-auto guns, close combat weapons, a variety of teas, and morning meditation that she never skipped. It was important to make sure she was working in her best interest every day, and some personal time in the morning helped with that. Boston never interrupted it. To say Jerome was massive would have been an understatement. He was every bit of 6'9" and 370 pounds, a mountain of a human who had the strength to match. He had short hair that was kept in waves. For his day job, he would typically wear a button-down shirt and plain-colored pants. Once he hit the streets with Boston, though, he'd don a nondescript t-shirt and chef's pants. Jerome had been an exceptionally talented cook all his life, and he worked in several mom-and-pop restaurants. He had learned that you can carry a lot in chef's pants, and for the work that the three of them did, that would often come in handy. Jerome was a mixture of muscle and bulk, not the most defined in his muscles, but just a mountain. He also had an incredible mind for logistics and mathematics. He had very dark skin and bright brown eyes that rested in well-rested sockets. He had a chain his mother had given him as a child, and he wore it constantly. It was a very precious item to him, and they had a great relationship. He went to Saturday breakfast with her every week. Jerome had played left tackle at Harvard while there on an education scholarship for his outstanding high school work, and after graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering, he started working on improving some of Boston's territory's infrastructure, the same area he had grown up in as a child. Boston and Jerome had hit it off when they first met, and Jerome started working for Boston almost immediately. So what's the deal? We just go in, take everyone out? They aren't going to just let us do what we want, Cassie said as the group walked down the street at night. She carried a trench knife and a MAC-10. Figured we'd rush in, kill the fucking asshole of a boss. I already called the cleaners. They're waiting around the corner for us to start. They do good work. We shouldn't have any trouble, Boston explained. What about the cops? They know these guys pretty well, don't they? Won't this draw attention to us? Jerome asked. The cops are starting to phase these assholes out. According to some very recent and reliable developments, it sounds like the cops were trying to get the money they could from these guys and then cut them off anyway. They shouldn't care all that much about them getting taken out. What about the people living in this part of town? Cassie asked. Probably just the same when they're gone. Won't have the gang, but the government will be back in town. I don't imagine much will change. Might get a little better, might get a little worse, Boston said, dropping the cigarette and stamping it out on the pavement. The three stood before the lights-out store. So we just taking him by surprise? Cassie said, trench knife already in hand. Yeah, try to be quiet for as long as you can. Don't hurt who we came for, Boston said with finality as he took out the lockpick kit and got to work on the door. Within a few seconds, the lock clicked and the door swung open soundlessly as Boston pushed it open from a squat. Jerome was second through the door after Boston Crouch walked in, his large mass blocking out the streetlights for a moment as he stood in the doorway. Cassie came in after, and she went left as she walked behind the counter. The group cleared the main store, looking for any sign of alarm or guard. Luckily, there was none, and after a quick search, the three appeared at the back door. Boston once again got down in a crouch and started working on the lock. Once he heard the click of the lock, he heard the muffled sounds of slides locking on the other side of the door. Fuck, he whispered as he bit his lip. Cassie, you're up. Go loud. It's fucked at this point. The element of surprise had been lost as the lock had clicked open too loudly. Doubtlessly, the other gang members beyond the door weren't expecting guests. Boston unholstered his 9mm and stood to the right side of the door. Jerome held a 12-gauge on the left, and Cassie took up a spot in the middle with her MAC-10. She kicked the door down and began spraying bullets immediately. The quick motion and the rapid fire made everyone in the room duck down for cover, and any shots aimed at the door went wide and hit the walls and ceiling. Go! Boston shouted as he sprinted into the room, firing his weapon to add to the general chaos that would keep heads down. He slid behind a piling of crates on the far right of the room, and Cassie slid next to him. Jerome was slower, but made it to an alcove on the left side of the room. He took out two of the guards with loud bangs from his shotgun as he moved. Cassie reloaded and provided covering fire as Boston broke right around the crates and flanked those hiding behind a flipped table. Some of Cassie's rounds had penetrated the table and hit one of the gang members. Boston caught them both off guard and finished them with 3 shots from his pistol. The group reloaded and moved through the room carefully. There was no more resistance. They found the hatch that led to the cellar in the far back left corner. Inside this cellar was supposedly a second hidden cellar that would have the rival boss and the kidnapped people that Boston and crew had come looking for. Same plan, hurry! Boston said, pointing down the stairs as Cassie sprinted down, firing as she went. Sliding back into cover, and a similar bout of combat resumed. Jerome hid up the stairs behind the low wall leading down for cover, and the 3 fought until the 5 guards in the basement were finally dead. By the time Jerome was able to start making his way down the stairs, the cleaners had shown up to start their work. Jerome gave them a polite nod before heading down to rejoin Cassie and Boston. The cleaners were a group of 3 individuals who worked quickly and expertly to scrub out any crime scene. Bodies were disposed, evidence was destroyed, there wouldn't be a trace left after they were gone. They all wore hazmat suits and had completely obscured faces and forms. Normally they were incredibly expensive, but they liked Boston and what he did on a personal level and would often offer their services at a discount. Jerome found Cassie and Boston searching for a way down. Still having to hurry, the room was quickly turned upside down. Eventually, a hatch in the ground was uncovered, and the group opened it to reveal another set of stairs that would lead them to their goal. Boston went first into the breach, hands up and the gun in its holster. He knew this was where the boss would be, and Boston was more valuable to the boss alive than dead. He could walk down and almost guarantee that he wouldn't be harmed by whoever was down there. At least harmed immediately. He motioned for Cassie and Jerome to wait. "Hey Gus, you down there?" he called out as he walked down the stairs. "Fuck off, Boston!" a loud and low and thick voice resounded. "It's been a while, man," Boston said, still descending the stairs. "You still walking down here? I said fuck off! I swear you better be ready to pay when you get down here." Boston finally rounded the corner on the man yelling at him. He was a larger man, sitting on a large brown leather chair. He had a couple of hostages bound and gagged. They were clearly happy to see Boston. For the most part, they looked okay. Maybe a little roughed up from the kidnapping, but at first glance, there wasn't anything immediately alarming. "How bad you hurt my people?" Boston said, hands up, glaring angrily at the rival boss. "They ain't hurt yet. The deadline I gave you hasn't been reached. You got my fucking money?" he yelled angrily at Boston. You think I come into your house at night and kill all your fucking guys to pay you? Are you fucking stupid, or are you that into your own shit? I know the cops are sending you floating down the river. I'm here to put you in the box, Boston said angrily. He scanned the room quickly. The boss had 5 guards, and the hostages were stupidly behind them, sitting on the floor, a mistake that would ensure Boston won this how he wanted to. You think I want to keep you alive if you're just coming here to be the ass you were raised to be? Go fuck yourself, Gus said, now spitting with his words. What, you got 5 buddies with guns and some hostages behind you and you think you're tough shit? Boston said, slowly taking his left foot and placing it behind his right. He yelled that last part rather loudly. In the moment, Gus probably assumed it no more than anger, and was so invested in the argument that he had failed to question who Boston might have been with. The yell was heard clearly by Cassie and Jerome, who now knew the composition of the room and when to act. I've got you at gunpoint is what I fucking got, Gus yelled, and on instinct, Cassie and Jerome knew to move. It was like bullet time in a fucking video game. It was beautiful. Just before the first goon fired on Boston, he took his left foot and kicked out his right. Falling backwards in midair, he withdrew his pistol, and bullets rained over him as he fell below. He shot one guard in the head before he ever hit the ground. When his back did finally hit the ground, Cassie had already taken out 2 more, and Jerome had placed a basketball-sized hole in the chest of a 4th. The final guard stuttered at the appearance of Jerome and Cassie. Boston, laying on the floor, shot him through the heart. In the span of a few seconds, Boston had won. That was the first chapter of the Jordan Kelby anime, Volume 1, Boston. This ebook releases for free Friday the 18th and starts the canonical Jordan Kelby anime series. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the full book.